to show you is what's called the knitted cast on, and then we'll go straight into knitting. And the reason why for someone going back into or returning to knitting or new to knitting, I like this because you're knitting the entire time, and it's reinforcing muscle movement. And in time, not too far in the distant future, you can adjust or change, and it will either become something that's natural, that you will fall into a knitting approach that you knew in the past, because I'm a strong believer that we bring to our knitting who we are historically and ancestrally, and or you want to try a different approach. But for now, this would be the baseline. So you take your yarn, this is the beginning of my yarn, and let's say 6 to 8 inches, you're going to make a slip knot. So if you've crocheted before, slip knots are familiar to you. If it's new, easiest way to do it is to do as I'm doing around my finger. So you take the yarn, bring it around your index finger, wrap it around, and then I'm going to tuck the yarn under and into the loop. I have another video that shows you how to make a slip knot. So if this is not clear, and clearly maybe I'm going too fast for you, I will gladly slow that down. So we have a slip knot. Bring your needle into the loop, and one of these tails will move the yarn. And you just have to test and see. So we have a slip knot. I'm going to cast on 10 stitches. The project for Knitting 101, which is the worsted weight, you use worsted weight yarn, but the Garter Stitch Scarf, it's called the Garter Stitch Scarf because every row is knit, and that's the name of the pattern. And my needles may go out of the shot for a moment because I wanted to use wooden needles, and one of my needles is a little tiny bit longer than the other, and that is not what you normally want to do. But I wanted to, be transparent about that. So as I was talking, let me go back. We have our slip knot. You place your slip knot and you're knitting in your left hand. My right hand is just holding the needle. You take the right hand and come in through the bottom of the slip knot. Then you take the working yarn, which is attached to the ball of yarn, which is here, and you're going to wrap around. This is the left needle, this is the right needle. Wrap around from the front to the back, the right needle. Take your index finger, hold the yarn, not hard, not stern, somewhat gentle, and you'll figure out what the best touch is. So you want to be gentle, but you want to hold your needles. You want to be able to control your needles. So you're going to slip your needle down slightly, and what I'm doing here is pushing the yarn through the stitch. That creates that new stitch. Bring it towards you, slip it back onto your left needle. Pull, and repeat. So now I have 2 stitches. I'm not going to address the bottom stitch. It will always be the top stitch. I can have 100 stitches here. It will always be the top stitch because we're adding stitches. Again, yarn, left needle, right needle, left and right. Bring the yarn around the right needle. Place your finger where the yarn meets. And you can use your finger and your thumb, or if it's new for you, just stop. Don't touch the yarn, bring the needle down, just so you have enough tip to go into the stitch. Now I've drawn it away, and I put it back on the needle. So that's that new stitch. When I said it's the new stitch. So now you have 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, top stitch coming from the bottom. Wrap, you can drop your yarn, bring your needle down. So let's say if I didn't bring my needle down and I tried to put that yarn into the stitch, I have so much needle tip here, I can't make it happen. So you draw your needle down, an inch, less than an inch. And I'm not doing anything to the needle, I'm just simply bending it. And it will pull the stitch, and I go through, and I have my new stitch. That's the 4th stitch. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Tip of the right needle through the bottom of the top stitch, yarn, left needle, right needle, yarn around the right needle, bring this needle back. Again, no different. Bring the stitch through, pull, and you bring it on to the left needle. So now my left needle, and so my stitches are not perfect. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when I say perfect, you see this one's a little bit further away from the stitch. That's okay, because just think of stitches as a chain link fence. They all work together, they work in harmony. If I pull on one stitch, it will take its strength from another stitch. It's like a sweater. When you complete your sweater, you might tug on your sweater. The stitches won't come off, they won't come apart. They share in each other's weight. So don't worry about the stitches not being perfect. And it's important, especially as a new knitter, do not expect to be perfect or that it must be one way or another. It's your knitting. You want to get through the project so you can look at what you've done and what you've accomplished, because you've accomplished a lot. And as you knit one project at a time, your stitch gauge will tighten up, and you'll see your stitch gauge tighten up as you're knitting that first project. So then, as I said, the Garter Stitch Scarf is the project that we are aiming for right now. And we'll do. That Garter Stitch Scarf can be as long or as short as you want it. Around 18 inches into the scarf, your gauge, actually might even be less than that, your gauge will just fall into place. So don't overthink it, don't worry about it, just enjoy the process. It's like having a nice vacation, just enjoy the process. Left needle, right needle, yarn, wrap it around your left needle, drop your needle down, same as before, nothing has changed. And then you can see overhead and push through the stitch. Now, that's my new stitch right there. That's my 5th stitch. Bring it over the needle, draw. Now, when I do draw the stitch, when I say draw, when I pull on the yarn, you want your stitch to hug the needle, but you don't want your stitch to strangle the needle. You don't want your stitch to be so tight that when I go in for the next stitch, I can't get in. Left needle, wrap the right needle, pull the needle back, and same thing, just pushing the stitch through. That creates now my 7th stitch. And I'm drawing, I'm bringing the stitch closer to the needle. And see how I have a little bit of space. So stitches are not circles. They are oval shape. There's always a little tiny space in there. So you come in from the bottom, left needle, wrap your right needle, bring that right needle down, leave about an inch on the tip. Oops. Trying to stay within the camera frame. And you push through, and now you have your 8th stitch. The 8th stitch is around the needle. Draw that yarn. tugging it. And you see, I'm not manhandling it. I'm not being rough with the stitches. Come in from the bottom, left needle, right needle, wrap the right needle, draw that right needle back, through. Okay, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now the next, this is my last one for this sample. If you're knitting the garter stitch scarf, if you want a narrower scarf, cast on 20 stitches. If you want a standard width scarf, cast on 40. And then you want size 8 needles. Wooden is the preference, or bamboo. And if you have questions, just let me know. I'm happy to help you. I came in from the bottom of the stitch, left needle, right needle, wrap the right needle, bring this right needle down so you have about an inch of the tip, push through. That's my 10th stitch. I make this bigger, place that onto the needle, and I draw the string. Draw the yarn. Now, if it helps, maybe you've already thought of this, take this video and play it slow motion, and that can help a great deal. I can provide a slow motion version of this video as well. So now I have my 10 stitches. Again, you're going to cast on 20 or 40, whichever you prefer. Worsted weight yarn, size 8 US needles. You take your right needle, you come in from the bottom of the stitch, left needle, right needle, wrap your right needle, draw that tip. You have about an inch left. You're going to bring the stitch through. The difference is now we're knitting. So this new stitch, I'm not going to make it bigger. I'm not going to put it on the left needle. I'm actually going to take it, what I'm doing now is, see my left index finger? I'm going to push that stitch. This is the old stitch now. This is the cast on row stitch that I'm touching with my left finger. And I'm going to push it off. Okay? Next stitch, pick up, wrap my right needle, bring the left needle through, and I am going to push off that stitch. Those are my 2 stitches on my first knitted row. Technically, it's my second knitted row. The really neat thing about a knitted cast on is that you're actually knitting the first row as you're casting on. So here, this, nothing's changed. It still goes through the loop. The only difference is I'm now pushing that stitch off. Pick up, wrap, here, pick up, wrap, bring it through, and I'm just, and you can see a different angle. That's the new knitted stitch with my thumb, and I'm just taking my index finger, because I'm so close to the top I can do that, and pushing it off. Pick up, wrap, pull it through, and there. Pick up, oops, wrap, pull it through, there. Pick up, wrap that right needle, pull it through the stitch, and pop that off. Pick up. So I used to have a little mantra that I would say to my kids. You get up in the morning, the needle goes through. You get dressed, bring that right needle down, and when you go through the stitch, you go through the door, and then you pop off and go to school. So that's the first row. So all of those stitches that were on the left needle, no longer on the left needle, they've all been knitted onto the right needle. So now I switch needles, the needles switch hands. So all those knitted stitches are now in my left hand to my right hand. So when you knit, you're always knitting from your left needle onto your right needle, and then you switch, as we did. And you keep doing that for every row. So again, you always knit from your left needle onto your right needle. Pick up, knit, bring it through, pop off. I'm knitting now, technically my third row, but it's really my second row of this type of knitting, as opposed to the cable cast on knitting, which is the first row. Okay. And you're going to find knitters who knit faster, who knit differently, who knit tighter. It's sort of like pregnancy. Everybody's got a war story. Just ignore the war stories. You have your own story, and how you knit is your story. So, I'm just knitting. I'm not doing anything that I haven't shown you already. And the more you knit, in time you become a faster knitter, so don't push the process. Enjoy the process as it is. There's enough in life going on that goes fast. So this is the garter stitch. Okay, as you notice, stitches from the left needle, no longer on the left needle, are all on the right needle. Next row, you switch hands. And you repeat. That is the garter stitch.